Take off your cap." Those 4 words echoed through the concrete walls of the holding cell behind Hall B of the Fulton County Courthouse in Macon, Georgia. Not a greeting, not a courtesy, just a command from Deputy Calvin Maddox. Darnell Hughes stood calmly, wrists cuffed in front of him. At 29, he cut an impressive figure in his neatly pressed dark gray suit. His dreadlocks were tied back as they always were when he needed to look professional. "I said take off your cap," Maddox repeated, his tone hardening. "I don't have a cap on," Darnell replied evenly, meeting the deputy's gaze. "These are my locks." Maddox's face tightened with judgment. He sighed heavily and turned to a metal cabinet near the sink. Darnell watched him unlock it, a cold feeling gathering in his stomach. When the deputy pulled out electric clippers, Darnell's voice remained calm but firm. "What do you think you're doing?" "You can't go in front of a judge looking like that," Maddox stated flatly. "You're going to be cleaned up." "I'm not a defendant," Darnell said. Maddox either didn't hear or didn't care. He powered up the clippers. "You got 2 options. Either I do this, or we keep you back here and charge you with contempt. Don't test me." Darnell had faced prejudice before, when his car was vandalized in an upscale neighborhood, when he was twice denied jobs he was overqualified for, but he'd never lost his composure. This wasn't about law or order, this was raw power, a man with a badge deciding someone who looked like him didn't deserve respect. Darnell remained silent as the clippers buzzed closer. Maddox didn't hesitate. He started at the crown, cutting through 6 years of carefully grown locks. His movements were rough and careless, leaving the skin red and irritated. A female deputy entered, looked confused, but said nothing. She handed Maddox a trash bag and left. When the last lock hit the floor, Maddox smirked. "Much better. Now you look like someone we can take seriously." He gestured to the mirror. "You're welcome." Darnell didn't look. "Are we done here?" They walked silently down the hallway, each step echoing like the buzz of the clippers still ringing in Darnell's ears. But when they reached the heavy oak doors of courtroom 3A, Darnell didn't stop at the defendant's bench. He walked directly to the judge's bench. Maddox froze, his face drained of color. The bailiff's eyes widened. Everyone turned to see Judge Darnell Hughes, his head now shaved raw, staring directly at the deputy who had just stripped him of his dignity. "I believe we're here to discuss proper conduct," he said, his voice low but clear. "Let's begin." The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Every eye darted between Judge Hughes and Deputy Maddox, who stood halfway between the gallery and the bar, hand grazing his duty belt as if searching for support. Judge Hughes adjusted his microphone and opened the file before him. This hearing was scheduled to address a citation issued to a Mr. Darnell Hughes, failure to signal on a lane change and suspected evasion during a traffic stop. He looked up at Maddox. "But Mr. Hughes isn't here for that. I am." Maddox opened his mouth, but no words came out. "I'd like to clarify the record before we proceed," Hughes continued. "Deputy Maddox, approach the bench." When Maddox finally stood before him, Judge Hughes leaned forward. "Would you like to explain your actions this morning in holding room B?" "I thought you were in holding," Maddox mumbled. "I didn't know you were the judge," Hughes finished. "And if I had been a defendant?" Maddox looked away, silent. "No," Hughes said. "You looked at me. You made a choice. You believed you had the right to change me. You didn't ask if I had a name, a title, or a voice. You decided how I should look to be heard." The room was motionless. Even the stenographer paused, fingers hovering above the keys. "I've seen many things in this court," Hughes continued, "but today I saw how power becomes casual when it thinks no one's watching." "I was doing my job," Maddox murmured. "Is that what that was?" Hughes asked. "Because if your job includes humiliating people based on appearance, you're either in the wrong profession or this courtroom has been blind for far too long." Hughes turned to the gallery. "You all saw me walk in, shaved, raw, stripped of something personal. You assumed I was on trial. That says more than I ever could. We've built a system where dignity is optional and selectively distributed." He looked back at Maddox. "Would you have shaved me if I were white?" Maddox's silence was answer enough. "Let me tell you what those locks meant," Hughes said, his voice softening. "They were my late father's legacy. He wore his hair that way until he passed. When I finished law school, I promised to carry that forward. It wasn't fashion, it was family. And in 5 minutes, you took it like it meant nothing." He paused to let the words settle. "You didn't just shave my head. You shaved away respect. You shaved away history. But what you didn't touch, what you can never touch, is my place in this seat." He pressed a button on the bench. A soft chime rang out, and moments later, 2 plainclothes officers entered. Internal Affairs. The tension in the room shifted immediately. "Please escort Deputy Maddox to the witness room," Judge Hughes instructed calmly. "He will be providing a statement regarding this morning's incident." After Maddox was led out, Hughes surveyed the courtroom. "This hearing is adjourned for its original purpose. But before you leave, I'd like to speak briefly, not as a judge, but as a man." He stepped down from the bench, standing before them without his robe. Just a man with a freshly shaven head and a voice tempered by experience. "I've presided over hundreds of cases, and I've always believed law at its best is about fairness. What happened today wasn't just an insult to me. It's part of something larger." He met each gaze in turn. "How many of you would have stopped that man before he shaved my head? How many would have spoken up if you thought I was just another defendant? The problem isn't just one deputy, it's a system that enables assumptions, rewards silence, and protects the wrong kind of power." A young attorney nodded. An older black woman wiped away a tear. A public defender shifted uncomfortably. "We can't change everything with one ruling," Hughes continued, "but we can change how we respond to what we witness. We can stop pretending we don't notice. We can stop saying, 'That's just how it is.'" Before leaving, Hughes contacted the district attorney's office to refer a case of misconduct for immediate review. As he turned off his microphone, the bailiff asked quietly, "You all right, Judge?" "No," Hughes answered, "but I will be." By noon, local headlines announced, "Deputy shaves judge's head in holding cell, claims mistaken identity." Not the whole truth, but enough to ignite controversy. The courthouse phones rang constantly with calls from activists, reporters, and concerned citizens. Some asked if it really happened. Others wondered how it was possible. A few anonymously defended Maddox. In his chambers, Judge Hughes sat with the blinds drawn, hands folded on his desk, lunch untouched. His clerk, Justine Brower, entered with a stack of papers. "You've got 3 interview requests and a message from Sheriff Delancey," she said. "He says it's a misunderstanding and wants to meet privately." Hughes laughed softly. Misunderstanding. They love that word. Always cleaner than the truth. "They're circling the wagons," Justine warned. "They're framing it like you overreacted." "I didn't react at all," he replied. "That's what they can't stand." He glanced at the mirror. His scalp still burned, a small cut near his temple scabbing over. No apology had come, just whispers and damage control. He called his mother. "You all right?" she asked immediately. "I will be," he answered after a pause. "Did he mean to do it?" she asked softly. "Yeah, he meant it." She didn't gasp or cry. She simply said, "Then you do what you have to." That evening, the sheriff's office released a statement. Deputy Maddox acted under the assumption that the individual was awaiting trial. While his methods may not reflect departmental standards, we are conducting an internal review and will take appropriate measures. No apology, No admission, just bureaucratic language meant to minimize the incident. Social media erupted with divided opinions. Some praised Judge Hughes for his composure. Others accused him of playing the victim. A few called him ungrateful, saying Maddox was only trying to help him look the part. By morning, protesters gathered in the courthouse parking lot with signs reading, "Respect our crowns and judges wear locks too." Inside, officials whispered about asking Hughes to take a quiet leave of absence while the matter was reviewed. Hughes refused. He arrived each day with his head bare and his chin high, conducting court as if nothing had changed, even though everything had. The fight wasn't just about a haircut. It was about being seen and respected in a system that often failed to recognize the humanity of black professionals. 3 days after the incident, Hughes received a letter from the State Commission on Judicial Conduct, carefully worded to suggest they were reviewing the circumstances surrounding the incident and the potential conflict of interest posed by Hughes presiding over his own mistreatment. "They're trying to make this about me," he told Justine. "That's how they work," she replied. "Make it messy enough, and people forget the real issue. They want me to apologize for not acting like a victim, or worse, for having the nerve to sit in this seat while looking like someone they'd usually drag before it." "You going to the town hall tonight?" Justine asked. "Thinking about it." "Go." The Macon Community Town Hall was packed with over 200 people from all walks of life. Judge Hughes hadn't planned to speak, but when the mic was offered to the audience, someone shouted, "Let the judge talk." Others joined in until the host looked at Hughes questioningly. He approached the microphone slowly. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight, not because I had nothing to say, but because I wanted to listen. But now I think it's time." He scanned the crowd. "What happened to me wasn't unique. That's what makes it worth discussing. The act was personal, but the thinking behind it is institutional." A woman in the front whispered, "Say that." "I've been called many things since this happened. Dignified, angry, professional, petty. But let's call it what it was. Violence. Not just physical, but symbolic, declaring someone doesn't belong unless they meet your standard of acceptability. That's a power many don't realize they hold." The room hummed with agreement. Now they're trying to clean it up, make it about protocols and chain of command. But there's no protocol for shaving someone without consent. That wasn't confusion. That was control. Brief applause broke out. "I've sat in that judge's seat for 5 years, earned it with a law degree, 3 bar exams, and one grandmother who wouldn't let me quit. I'm not going anywhere." The applause grew louder. "And if they think I should have swallowed the insult to keep peace, they don't understand what this seat represents. Justice isn't always neat. It doesn't always speak in the proper tone." Outside afterward, a reporter asked, "What do you say to people who think this story is getting too much attention?" Hughes looked directly into the camera. "It's not about me. It's about how easily we accept wrongs until the person they try to silence is the one holding the microphone." The courthouse atmosphere had changed by Monday. The usual casual conversations had been replaced by awkward silences. No one knew what to say to Judge Hughes, or perhaps they lacked the courage to say it. Whispers suggested Hughes should recuse himself from cases involving law enforcement or step back for the sake of public trust. But this wasn't about trust, it was about comfort. Hughes had made people uncomfortable by refusing to disappear. That Tuesday in court, 2 new deputies stood at the back, avoiding eye contact. The gallery was eerily quiet, observers curious how a publicly humiliated man would carry himself. Hughes did exactly what he always did, took the bench, read the docket, called the first case. During a sidebar, an attorney whispered, "Off the record, you've got more support than you know." He didn't smile but said, "Thank you." Later, a retired white judge who had mentored Hughes called. "You holding up?" he asked. "Still showing up," Hughes replied. "That's the hardest part," the old judge said. "They'll pressure you, try to bury this in bureaucracy. They might offer you a quiet way out. Don't take it. This isn't just about you." "I know," Hughes said, "but it feels personal." "Because it is. You made the system look in the mirror, and that always hurts more than people admit." After hanging up, Hughes stared out his window. He was tired, not just physically, but soul deep. Tired of code switching, of smiling when he wanted to scream, of staying composed while others caused harm without consequences. He remembered his father saying, "They'll forgive you for being smart, but not for being proud." It made sense now. When the local bar association invited him to speak on professional resilience, he accepted. He wouldn't prepare notes. He would simply come as he was, bald, tired, unapologetic. Because every time they tried to push him aside, he would stand taller. The modest conference room of the Macon County Bar Association buzzed with anticipation. People hadn't come just to hear about professional resilience. They wanted to see what Judge Hughes would do next. He arrived alone, no entourage, just a man in a dark blazer with his scalp still healing under the fluorescent lights. Some greeted him hesitantly, unsure whether to acknowledge what had happened. Others, mostly black lawyers, approached directly to shake his hand. "You're carrying all of us," one whispered. "Don't let them break you." When Hughes took the microphone, he noticed two plainclothes deputies watching from the back. "Resilience," he began, letting the word hang in the air. "That's what they tell you to be when they don't plan on fixing anything." A murmur rippled through the room. "I've been told to stay silent, to let the department handle it quietly, that speaking out muddies the waters. But silence doesn't protect systems, it preserves them." He spoke deliberately, never rushing. "I didn't choose to become an example, but since I am one, let's discuss what that means. They shaved my head without permission, not because I broke any law, but because I didn't fit their image of authority. They thought I was someone they could control." His voice tightened. "But I wasn't. I was the one they would have answered to, had they bothered to look up." The room was completely silent. "I don't want sympathy or hashtags. I want change, real accountability, not just for Maddox, but for everyone who watched, stayed silent, or tried to minimize it afterward." He addressed the legal professionals directly. "We have the power to change standards. If we don't speak up when injustice happens in our own halls, what do we stand for?" Sharp applause broke out. He paused, letting it subside. "I'll continue sitting on that bench as long as I'm permitted. And I'll carry this scar the way some carry titles, visible, earned, and never forgotten." The applause grew louder. Afterward, a law student approached. "Judge Hughes, I'm sorry this happened to you." He shook her hand gently. "I'm not anymore. If it hadn't happened, too many would still believe silence equals safety." That night, a soundbite from his speech went viral. Resilience isn't staying quiet. It's standing up while they try to cut you down and still refusing to shrink. By morning, the quote had thousands of shares. But behind the scenes, the pressure mounted. Hughes received word from a colleague at the state capitol that legislators were drafting a resolution for a formal review of his conduct, disguised as concern for courtroom impartiality. Pure retaliation. The fight wasn't over. It was escalating. But this time, Hughes wouldn't stand alone. A storm was brewing, and more voices were rising to join his. For the next week, every move Judge Hughes made became news. When he ruled on a police misconduct case, something he'd done dozens of times before, opinion columns questioned his impartiality. When he recused himself from another involving the sheriff's office, different voices accused him of making a statement. "You can't win," Justine told him one morning, dropping a stack of messages on his desk. Either you're too angry or not angry enough. Hughes was reviewing case notes when Sheriff Delancey finally appeared unannounced at his chambers. "Got a minute, Judge?" The sheriff's weathered face looked carefully composed, practiced concern. Hughes gestured to a chair. 5 minutes. Delancey settled in, his uniform crisp, his manner rehearsed. "This situation has gotten out of hand." "Which situation would that be?" Hughes asked, his voice level. "You know what I mean. The department looks bad. The court looks bad. Nobody wins." Hughes set down his pen. "Someone lost their dignity. Someone else kept their job. Doesn't seem equal to me. Maddox has been reassigned. He's off public duty." Reassigned. Not fired, not suspended. Reassigned. Delancey leaned forward. "Look, we both know how things work. He's got 12 years on the force, a union, a record." "And I have a scalp that still burns when I shower," Hughes replied. "But I'm supposed to be satisfied with a reassignment," the sheriff sighed. "What do you want? An apology? I can make that happen. I want accountability. I want consequences that match the offense. You lawyers always want perfect justice. There's no such thing." Hughes stood. "Then we'll have to settle for better justice. Your 5 minutes are up." After Delancey left, Hughes sat thinking. He wasn't naive. He knew the system protected its own, but he also knew how to use that same system to push for change. That afternoon, he called Charles Deloche, his retired mentor. "I need your help with something." 2 weeks later, the courthouse steps were crowded again, not with protesters this time, but with reporters and community members. Judge Hughes stood at a podium, flanked by 5 other judges, 3 black, 2 white, all colleagues from neighboring counties. "Today, we're announcing the formation of the Judicial Equity Committee," he began. "A voluntary coalition of judges committed to examining and improving how our courts treat every person who enters them, regardless of appearance, background, or circumstance." Charles Deloche stepped forward, his white hair catching the sunlight. "For too long, we've allowed informal practices to undermine formal rights." What happened to Judge Hughes was extreme, but not isolated. Similar indignities occurred daily to those without his position or platform. The committee outlined a 3-point plan. First, mandatory training for court officers on implicit bias and cultural sensitivity. Second, a clear reporting system for incidents of disrespect or discrimination. Third, community listening sessions where citizens could share their experiences with the court system. "This isn't about punishment," Hughes clarified. "It's about progress. We can't change history, but we can change what happens next." As cameras flashed, a reporter called out, "What about Deputy Maddox?" Hughes paused. "This isn't about one deputy anymore. It's about ensuring no one, defendant, witness, victim, or judge, is stripped of their dignity in the halls of justice." The initiatives didn't solve everything. Change never comes easily, especially to institutions built on tradition. The state commission still issued a mild rebuke to Hughes for allowing personal circumstances to become a public matter. Some officers initially resisted the training, calling it political correctness. But something had shifted. People were talking, not just about hair or identity, but about power, respect, and who deserves both. 6 months later, Judge Hughes sat in his chambers reviewing a case. His hair had begun to grow back, not locks yet, just the beginning of tight curls. He ran his hand over his head, a gesture that had become habit. Justine knocked and entered. "You've got a visitor. Says she's here about the community session." Hughes checked his watch. "Send her in." A young woman entered, maybe 20, clutching a folder. "Judge Hughes? I'm Tiana Jackson. I'm a student at Macon State." "What can I do for you, Ms. Jackson?" She hesitated, then squared her shoulders. "I've been following your story since it happened. I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For not staying quiet. Last month, a professor told me my braids were unprofessional and suggested I change them before mock trial." She paused. "I almost did. Then I remembered what you said about resilience." Hughes nodded slowly. "What happened?" She smiled. "I kept my braids, and I won the competition." As she left, Hughes thought about his father's locks, about legacy, about all the ways people try to erase who you are, and all the ways you can refuse to let them. He opened his desk drawer and took out a small envelope. Inside was a single lock of hair he'd managed to retrieve from that day. He kept it not as a reminder of humiliation, but as proof of what remained after others try to cut you down. The unbreakable core of who you are. Somewhere across town, Deputy Maddox still wore his badge, still carried his authority, albeit in a different role. The system had protected him, as systems do. But systems can change when enough people demand it. And Judge Darnell Hughes, sitting in his chambers with growing hair and unwavering purpose, had no intention of stopping until they did.